各位委員大家好。
Good afternoon, members. It is time. We have also formed a quorum. This is going to be the last meeting for the year for our panel. In the past year, in terms of agriculture and fisheries, food safety, environmental hygiene, and markets, the administration has come up with a large amount of efforts, and members have been most cooperative. So I think we have achieved a lot. I'm most grateful to the SAR government as well as members. Let's look forward to more results in the coming year. Let's invite the administration to join us. Members, you may consider giving the admin a round of applause. Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration and Secretary for Environment and Ecology, good afternoon. We have got two items today. For the second item, it is a legislative proposal, so I hope you can stay behind and indicate your support or not. Papers issued since the last meeting. We haven't got any information papers issued since last time. So we move on to the second one directly. Progress of the government program on tackling hygiene black spots. I think the administration has come up with a PPT to walk us through the performance for the past few months. DCS4A and Secretary, over to you. Good afternoon, Chairman. Do I have to press this button? Thank you, Chair. Members, good afternoon. Well, for this particular topic in our paper, we have already given you the information as well as the statistics in relation to the work carried out by the District Matters Coordination Task Force in delivering the government program on tackling hygiene black spots. We have also got the figures pertaining to related departments. So I'm not going to repeat what has already been set out in our paper. Rather, I would suggest that let me make use of a PowerPoint presentation which contains a number of photographs and that can show you what we have done in relation to the black spots. It is a matter of before and after photographs, and you can see the contrast in relation to the cleanliness. As of early October this year, departments under the working group have already cleared over 650 black spots, and we have also stepped up our cleansing of 4,000 plus public places, covering rear lanes, main streets, as well as vicinity around public places or public facilities. I have selected a number of examples spreading across the territory. Let me show you the before and after conditions of the black spots around the territory. You can see the contrast. First of all, this is a famous place. It has been called the Snake Lane in Changsha 1. For the past 10 years, a full decade of time, a lot of junk was left there. People also fed animals. So the environmental hygiene conditions were poor. The fire escape was blocked. The railing was blocked. And then our task force coordinated the work. This problem has been resolved. As of now, I think we haven't seen any relapse. The second photograph, again, it is a notorious case to the local community. It's the so-called Villain Lane in Tokwa 1. For the past few years, many people carried out unauthorized building works there. A lot of construction materials were left there, personal items were left there. So it's a matter of obstructing the public passageway and also obstructing the private lanes. You even saw scaffoldings there. As a result of the joint efforts of government departments, again, we have resolved the problem. And the hygiene there is good and has been maintained. Next one is a simpler case. Peel Street is a rear lane at Peel Street of a smaller scale. Next, in the Western District, the rear lane at Howell Street. So after our cleansing operation, you can see the stark contrast. It is not a matter of having to put in a lot of money. As long as citizens are willing to abide by the law, I'm sure we can use a low level of cost to achieve great results of cleanliness. Next, in Causeway Bay, Witchfield Road, again a lot of junk has been left there. It's next to the terminus for bus 5X, Kwun Tong, Hong Ling Road. This is a rear lane. It used to be littered with a lot of junk. Now you see that there has been huge improvements. The rear lane is clear and dry. And then on the 14th of August, when I launched the government program on tackling hygiene black spots, that's the place that we pledge our efforts. That's in a rear lane at Legislative Road. Others at that time wondered whether we could sustain the efforts. I'm glad to tell you that despite some initial relapses, today you see that we're able to keep it in such a nice condition as shown in the photograph. Moving on to the new territories. In Sha Tin District, a rear lane in Tai Wai Road. After removing the junk there, the rear lane is much more spacious. A similar case at a rear lane in Yuen Long. Other than the rear lanes, for some major roads, you see the accumulation of litter as well as the depositing of junk. It obstructs pedestrians, it obstructs the motorists. It is also an environmental nuisance. For this one, it shows the case of Shing On Street in Sai Wan Ho Eastern District. So by comparing the before and after photographs, you will be impressed by the achievement. Next one, Stone Nullo Street. Again, the litter accumulated in the first photograph. The second photograph shows a much better condition. Everything has been cleared. Next one, near to Po On Road Market in Shin Road. Again, accumulation of litter and junk. Next one, Mongkok near Tong Mei Road. As a result of the market operation nearby, you can see a lot of foam rubber boxes in the first photograph. With our efforts, it has been much improved. Next, Northern District in Shengshui Hang, and then next to the car park, we used to see a lot of bagged rubbish. Nowadays, it has been sort of improved. Next one, Washan Village in the Northern District, a similar case. Again, it has been dealt with. Next one, in Tuen Mun, is a notice board for Yik Yuen Village South. You have got a sitting out area. People like to litter the place with cigarette butts as well as other types of rubbish. This has been cleared. We'll now talk about shop obstruction. I think you all agree that it is a long-standing, big and difficult problem. Since October this year, the FHD as well as the police moved from district to district, and they carried out joint departmental law enforcement actions and cleared away the litter accumulated. And you can see a lot of significant improvements in many areas. First of all, Chunyang Street. For the photograph on the left-hand side, in fact, some goods were even left on the road other than obstructing the pedestrian pathway. Next one, Wan Chai Road junction with Canal Road West. For the photograph on the left, is quite alarming because the goods were even displayed for sale on the road. It's not just a matter of pavement obstruction. And then for the right-hand side, you can see that we've been watching it closely. For the past month or so, we were able to keep it up like that without any relapses. The following one shows Wan Chai Road junction with Burlington Road. It used to be sort of affected by the stacks of foam rubber boxes. It has now been cleared. Next one, Shui Wall Street in Kwun Tong. Again, it's a notorious case in Kwun Tong. Now we're able to keep the roads clear. Next one, Keelung Street in Sam Shui Po. Again, the contrast is stark. Next one, Long Fong Garden in Northern District. On the left-hand side, you can see that the emergency vehicle access has been blocked. It's a hazard. Nowadays, we are able to contain the problem. Next one, again, a notorious case locally, is the 4 lanes in Tai Po District. This specific one is called Tai Pong Lane. Next one, Chun Long Street in Chun Wan. Finally, let's take a look of the case of abandoned vehicles in rear lanes. Departments in the past few months took on 120 public rear lanes, and then more than 330 abandoned vehicles have been removed. Just to show you some photographs. First of all, the case in To Kwa Wan. The second one shows you the case in Ao Tau Kok. Well, usually you see bicycles being abandoned or motorcycles being abandoned in the rear lanes. The next one, it shows you the case of Fook Lee Street in Tai Kok Tsui. And what follows is the case of Kwai Chung. Finally, we can take a look of Mei Kwong Street in To Kwa Wan. It's a rear lane. I'm not sure whether you can see it properly. It's quite sort of notorious because a car was left abandoned there. Well, for our task force, as a result of our work, we're able to impress upon the public at their workplace and at their homes that we have been delivering. In relation to government's efforts to improve the environmental hygiene, it shows that we are able to do that and we have the will to do it. Now, I think the public would like to have a clean environment. In relation to littering and shop obstruction, we are proposing an increase in the penalty levels. We have noted a general support. We want Hong Kong to become a clean and beautiful metropolitan city. I think it is the golden opportunity. It is hard to come by. I will appeal to the public to keep our city clean and make sure that we treasure our beautiful cityscape. If the new culture is acceptable and recognized by the citizens, then we can surely have a very beautiful city. We are going to listen attentively to members for your views concerning our work. Thank you. Thank you, DCS, for your detailed briefing. I did visit the many streets that you referred to, and I could tell you from my personal experience. Let me read out the names of members who would like to speak. Chen Hoi-yin, Vincent Zhang, Dr. An Wen-yu, Chen Pui-leung, Lam Wen-guang, and Xiu Ka-fei, in that order. I think we still have sufficient time, so I would suggest that 5 minutes each covering your questions and answers. First of all, Ms. Chen. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank both the DCS as well as the Secretary. We saw the photographs, and we can see that you spent a lot of efforts and time on cleaning up the rear lanes. Keeping our place clean, it is a difficult and long-standing and big issue. I just wonder for how long we can sustain the efforts. Just for the few days that you took your photographs, or would it be sustainable over the long term? So I would say that it depends on manpower as well as monitoring. So please tell us as to the level of manpower. Please tell us about the CCTV cameras that you have installed for the rear lanes so as to make sure that the cleanliness can be sustained. Second question is the rear lanes. After keeping the rear lanes clean and clear, what can we do there? Sometimes you can see that in overseas countries, murals can be put up on the walls of the rear lanes. But in our case, it seems that you just allow the rear lanes to appear bland and monotonous. And then for the long-standing, big and difficult issues, we know that other than the rear lanes and public places that have been littered, what about people accumulating a lot of rubbish and junk in their own homes. Currently, our laws do not allow us to take any action, but I'm sure that we want to have it resolved. For private flats and for public rental housing units, we do have such rubbish-filled units. What can be done about that?
And then about the fixed penalty tickets and level. This has to do with cleaning of rear lanes. I know that you are increasing the penalty substantially. In terms of littering and also spitting in public places, well, the penalty will be increased from $1,500 to $3,000. I have reservation. I even object to it. Can you share with us the data on how many fixed penalty notices have you issued in the past year? Should we be tackling the problem of littering by penalty, or should we be encouraging people not to do so? So should you be doing more public education instead of increasing the penalty? And then for the shopfront illegal extension, the penalty will be increased from $1,500 to $600,000. And some members have also suggested a progressive penalty system. So you have 2 minutes to answer 3 questions, DCS. That's very challenging. Let me take the third question. We are going to be dealing with the problem of people hoarding articles in their own homes. Now, as for the penalty, I'll leave it to Mr. Chair Chin-Hua. On your first 2 questions, the show photos that I show, how long will it remain that way? It's not that we chose a particular juncture in time that we took the photo. We just gather the photos from the departments. Apart from the snake lane, we are just retrieving the photos from the departments on a random basis. So this is really the truth. We know where the black spots are. So we will not be just picking the black spots, which are kept clean for a couple of days only, and show the photos to you. How do we maintain the cleanliness of the places? Well, 4 points here. First, government departments have drawn up targets and clear action plans. Of course, there will also be KPIs. In terms of our systems, we have come up with the standard modes of operation. Now, we are going to amend the legislation in 2 phases to close the loopholes in the legislation to enhance the deterrent effect. And then there will be surveillance or monitoring by the community. Hopefully, in the middle of next month, we will be putting up a website whereby the 600 or so black spots will be uploaded, and then people can help us monitor the situation. So if you think that there is a relapse, there is a channel for you to reflect the situation. And lastly, we will be also building a culture in which Hong Kong people will cherish the clean society. And as for whether the rear lanes can be made available for beautification by young people, we will talk to the HAD. Now, manpower. Well, let's talk about resources. It's not just about manpower. Well, some of the work has been outsourced. I stand to be corrected by government departments if I'm wrong. In 2022 to 23, we'll be spending around $200 million. Well, maybe to enhance our cleaning efforts. We will be increasing the number of nighttime rodent teams and so on. So the FEHD will do that. The FS has allocated $500 million to improve our environmental hygiene. So that shouldn't be a problem. As for CCTVs, well, in June, we had 300 CCTV cameras. That number has been increased to 400. So based on the actual needs, the FEHD will continue to increase the number of CCTV cameras at black spots. As for the penalty, I suggest that the Bureau Director can respond when we discuss the next item, because the member has gone over time. Mr. Vincent Zhang, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I would like to thank the government department for doing a lot of work in the past few months to deal with hygiene issues, especially the FHD and the frontline staff of FHD. Well, for the snake lane, well, the problem has been with us for a number of years, and through the major effort this time, the problem has been resolved. And of course, many colleagues will ask the question as to how we can maintain the cleanliness of the place going forward. I think you can think about increasing the penalty and so on and so forth. Hong Kong people have expectations that the situation can be maintained. I have 3 questions. The DCS mentioned about standard modes of operation. In paragraph 5, you referred to shopfront extension and abandoned vehicles in rear lanes being dealt with through the standard modes of operation. And then, apart from this, from these 2 fronts, would you be adopting this model in dealing with rodent infestation and also illegal selling of articles by domestic maids, etc.? And the beautification of cityscape. I hope that more young people can be pulled in to help with beautifying our cityscape. So please seek their assistance in beautifying the community. And then I'm very concerned about Lunar New Year, because every year during the Lunar New Year period, especially in Yao Chin Mong and Shamshipo, there has been a lot of illegal hawking, and the situation is very chaotic. So during the Lunar New Year, I hope that you can put in extra efforts to deal with the problem. So these are my 3 questions. DCS. Thank you. Madam Chair? First, about standard mode of operation. Well, we are dealing with the problem of abandoned vehicles in rear lanes through this operation. This problem has been plaguing us for over 10 years, and the respective powers and responsibilities of the departments are not very clear. So we have clarified the respective roles of the departments. We ask one department to take the lead. Now, right now, we have conducted clearance operations in over 120 public rear lanes with more than 330 abandoned vehicles removed. The problem, the result has been good. And sometimes you may spot a car or 2 in the rear lanes that might possibly be in a private road. Well, because of our limited authority, we are constrained in working on the private road. So if the owners corporation make a request for us to remove their vehicle, then that would be more appropriate. And then on shopfront extension, we are also adopting the joint enforcement mode. Why? Because for shopfront extension, the FHD's enforcement powers are limited. So that's why the police has been pulled in to help out, because the police have the power to remove the extension. So we will be dealing with that in the second phase of our legislative amendment. And in the next agenda item, we're going to talk about the increasing the penalty level in this regard. And then Mr. Zhang referred to seeking the young people's help in beautifying the cityscape. Like what I said, we can talk to the HYAB and we can consider that this is something good. Well, let's do it in a more systematic way. And then Lunar New Year. What is your point of concern again? Because during the first and second day of Lunar New Year, illegal hawking has been rampant, and FHD has been paying attention to that. But because if you have cooked food stores, and that might be some hazards too. The FHD has been dealing with the problem over the Lunar New Year for many years. I believe that the director can supplement. We will deploy enough manpower resources. We will deploy the necessary manpower, and we will work on the CNY fair as well. we will make available sufficient manpower to deal with the situation over the Lunar New Year. The operation in the past few years has been smooth. Mr. Frankie Ngan, or Dr. Frankie An, I see that the government has a resolve to deal with the hygiene black spots and has put in a lot of efforts. I have a question. At the council meeting last week, I have asked the same question. At the TPS housing estates, some housing residents are feeding rodents in the public places. Well, the owners' corporation cannot do anything. And then the housing department, because it's a TPS estate, cannot do anything, cannot deduct points. And then the FEHD can't do anything. It's like the situation of a private road. This is a PRH resident. So how will the government help or deal with the scenario in which a PRH tenant is doing something illegal in a TPS estates? And also the question on CCTV. What are the standards you adopt in installing CCTV at certain locations? Well, FHD has CCTV targeting illegal dumping of waste. And if shopfront extension is spotted on a CCTV, that will not be dealt with. So as long as illegal acts are captured on the CCTV, I think you should enforce the law, irrespective of whether it's a shopfront extension or fly tipping. So let me take the question about feeding rodents in public place. And I'll ask a CCTV to take the question on CCTV. The AFCD in November has submitted an amended notice on prohibiting feeding of wild animals, and the feeding of animals all over the territory has been banned, and that covers rodents as well. And the notice will commence operation on the 31st of October this year, and after that took effect. So feeding of rodents is considered illegal. I know that the housing department, in relation to controlling rodents in their housing estates within their area, has done a lot of work. In TPS estates, if the resident does something within his household, then we can do. No, they are doing that in the public places near the planters areas. Well, if they do something within their own units, we can do something. But then for TPS, public places, that falls within the ambit of the owners' corporation. We can do two things. First, we are a member of the owners' corporation, so we hope that the property management can do something. And then for the public place, it's just like the public roads. We will be liaising with the FHT to see whether they can help. Well, there are more constraints in relation to what we can do in TPS estate, but we can work together with the FHT and also the owners' corporations. We can also seek assistance from these two bodies. And then, FHD, would you be responding? Installation of internet cameras. We target locations where there is rampant disposal of waste. Previously, we had 309 cameras. And after October, we have installed 90 more. So a total of 400 cameras are now have been installed. Now, as for images captured on CCTV, that will help us in planning our law enforcement actions. You refer to illegal shopfront extension, and actually when that is being done, a number of laws have been breached. Say, for example, putting articles up for sale in public places causing obstruction, and for fresh food provision shop. And they will be breaching the regulation in relation to selling outside of designated areas. So we may have the images, but then these images may not lead to conviction on the part of the parties concerned. All we can do is to, is to help us to arrange for our law enforcement action.
住港
Well, just now, the Housing Department told us that for the public areas of TPS estates, law enforcement is to be carried out by the FHD. So can I confirm with the FHD that your role is more than that of providing technical advice? FHD. Well, in relation to rodent control, different departments have different roles, and then they will deal with their respective cases. In the case of such common areas, it will be the FHD's work. Can I confirm this point? Well, you can have it during the second round. Dr. An, would you like to provide the specific address to the two directors of departments? Sorry, Chair. As the director has said, both departments work hand in hand. Now, Dr. N is saying that nobody is taking care of that case. Maybe that can be followed up after the meeting. Next, Mr. Chen Pulang. Thank you, Chair. Let me first of all commend the authority for tackling the problem of littering. I think the results are good and environmental hygiene has been much improved. I've got two questions here. First of all, other than the 600 plus black spots which will receive priority attention, I think we need to prevent new black spots from emerging. So my question is, in relation to the prevention of new black spots being sort of developed, do you have any ways to prevent that from happening? Say, for example, the DCS talked about launching a website for us to carry out monitoring. Is it possible to have a function to allow us to lodge a complaint? Secondly, in relation to the display of bills and posters without permission, you didn't mention that, but it's getting more and more serious. For estate agents, they have been using the lampposts and railings to put up the bills or posters. During weekends, they will try to use cellular tapes to stick some information on such places. I haven't seen any improvement at all. Is it because it's difficult to enforce the law? It's difficult to pinpoint who to prosecute? There's in relation to providing details concerning properties for sale or for rent. I'm afraid this is causing a problem to the motorists. Their sightlines have been affected. For the penalty levels, personally, I'm in favor of increasing it. Now, even if it is to be increased to $3,000, if you don't litter, you won't be caught. So it is not outrageous. For shopfront extensions, even for a fine of $6,000, it may not work because there are people who break the law frequently. So I suggest that maybe in the long term, for those who are repeat offenders, they should be ordered to stop their operation. Just like in the case of the restaurants, they have their licenses suspended, say, for a week if they repeatedly breach the hygiene requirements. New black spots, DCS. I mentioned that given the $200 million fund, the FHG has already enhanced the manpower for law enforcement. So in the light of the information intelligence received from different quarters, they will tackle the problem. As to the black spots, as I have said, in the short term, we are not going to delete the existing black spots. because that would send out the wrong message, saying that it is not being monitored and people can resort to their bad habits. So for the number of black spots, we will just keep adding the new ones to them. So currently the number is 700. It doesn't mean that things have worsened, just that we are not delisting the black spots that have been dealt with. As to whether the website will get the function of receiving complaints, indeed it will have such a function. I'm sure there are more citizens who are public spirited than our law enforcement officers. So do tell us where you find the black spots, and we will send people to pay a site visit. So lodge a complaint to us first, and then we'll send people out to check whether it meets the definition of black spots. Mr. Chen talked about the illegal display of bills and posters. When we increase the penalties, such acts will be covered as well. But of course, as to the issue or the problem that he referred to, it isn't just a matter of eyesores. If you display the bills or posters in the street, motorist sightlines may be affected. Now we have got the director here. I'm sure he will pay attention to that. So, Mr. Chen, please refer specific spots that you are aware of to us after the meeting. It is indeed something that we have to take care of. As to the actual penalty levels, whether we can suspend the operation in the case of a repeat offender, I leave it to the next topic on the agenda. Now, for restaurants, since they are covered by the general restaurant licenses, so we can suspend the operation. But if you are merely a shop selling fruits or other items, it is not that easy to stop the operation. On the other hand, $6,000 means that it is quite a large sum, and we can issue more than one fixed penalty ticket in a day. It can be a few within a day. Mr. Lam Guang, thank you, Chair. First of all, let me commend the joint efforts of the departments. We are glad to see the results. However, in the past, I have been concerned about the case of one street, two different systems. In the past, departments would not talk to each other. They would just do whatever was within their own portfolios. I think this has changed quite a lot recently. I need to commend the FHD staff members. Well, I think they are willing to take the initiative to take up the task first. But we can't sort of just leave it to the FHD. It's better to have a standard mode of operation so that different departments can cooperate with each other and try to resolve the thorny environmental issues. So first of all, about the standard mode of operations, can you give us the details? I think in the past, say for example, we dealt with the accumulation of junk by the street sleepers in subways. It took a few departments, police, social welfare department, FGHD, home affairs, etc., to carry out the cleansing operation. And it took more than the FHD. So who will kickstart the joint operation? Please elaborate. And how are you going to make sure that the cleanliness can be maintained? And members also referred to new black spots emerging. And what are you going to do with the existing black spots or black spots that have been cleared? And then for the complaints, currently I will also call the number 1823. But I'm afraid, despite the simplified version of 2.1, it is still unfriendly. If you want to complain about obstruction, you have to press a few more buttons because there is a very fine line between shopfront obstruction, outside restaurants or non-restaurants. So I think you better sort of make it more streamlined so as to save time of the complainants. And then in the case of rodent control, FHD introduced something new. Probably it isn't really something innovative, but then they have made use of the T-shaped rodent traps. It is the past few weeks that villagers got this new type of devices. That's the information given to me by frontline officers. Well, the FHD may be successful in dealing with rodents. Maybe the LCSD parks as well as the housing department would also be interested in adopting such new measures. When are you going to extend the scheme? DCS, standard modes of operation. It means that we have got different scenarios, we have got different issues, and then it will be up to the District Matters Coordination Task Force to make a decision. Or you can say that it is mainly me that would be finalizing the decision. It will be difficult to standardize or generalize as to who will take the lead. In the case of shopfront obstruction, of course, everybody can take the initiative to deal with it. When it is unclear, then the district officer on the ground can carry out the coordination. Well, in fact, the coordination has been more specific. FHD and the police will mainly be asked to carry out the joint enforcement action. In the case of railings, it is not for the home affairs. Rather, it is in the hands of the transport department. They will take action first, and then they will put up a notice asking for the abandoned vehicles to be removed. A reasonable period of time is given. When that is not done, then the highways department will remove the vehicles to a vehicle park under the management of the lands department. You refer to the example of the operation involving street sweepers. Well, if a street sweeper accumulates a lot of junk or litter, again we can come up with a way to deal with the problem. And then as to the arrangements for lodging complaints, you asked me as to how we can have lasting effects. I answered the question earlier on. There are 4 elements. As to the telephone number of 1823, you said that that's too cumbersome. In January, we are going to launch a new web page. And then, in fact, for COVID-19 thematic page, there's a dashboard, and you can see red dots on the map of Hong Kong. So it is quite similar. You can leave behind a message, or you can take photographs of the black spots, upload your photograph, leave behind your contact details, and then we will follow that up automatically. As to the use of new technologies, I think I can defer the question to the department. Well, in fact, the FHD as well as the housing department have been relying on technologies to deal with the problems. One other department, which is not represented here today, has also been working on seepage of water on the ceilings. And we have been using thermal imaging, and we have been using microwave to identify the source of water seepage. So different departments are aware of the need to make good use of technology to deal with problems rather than just relying on the conventional methods. Well, I think you have overrun the time allotted, so I will leave it to the second round for the director to answer the question. Stanley Lee. Well, I have to say that you have my generous support concerning your achievements under the government program. The results are visible to everybody in relation to shopfront obstruction, rear lane problems, etc., etc. We have seen a lot of improvements. Now, my question for the DCS, a couple of months have passed, and then your colleagues have been raiding the different black spots. Many of them have been cleared and kept clean. I want to know whether you have seen any relapses. Yes, so that's your question. All right. Thank you, Chair.
DCS. Well, yes, but not many cases. For the District Matters Coordination Task Force, we set out to tackle the thorny areas or locations, and we work on them repeatedly. So after our repeated efforts, people are aware that they should not do something similar. And we and the FHD and the police are joint operations. And the FHD will also be empowered in the future to remove obstacles obstructing the public places. So both the police and the FHD will be vested with that power. So with this approach, I hope that the situation can be improved. You talk about joint enforcement actions. FEHC and other departments have been working all along, but for the latest actions, how are they different from past actions? How come that you have been effective in your latest action but not in your previous actions? What is the key? I was the vice chairman of a group taking care of citywide cleaning action, and back then some of the long-standing big and difficult problems have not been tackled. We have not been thorough in resolving all the problems. So now, after that group was disbanded, some of the work could not be continued. And the fixed penalty level has been increased from $600 to $1,500. That was quite a substantial increase, but then people got used to it. And then we didn't have a sort of culture whereby Hong Kong people should make sure that our city is clean. So we adopt a multi-pronged approach this time. We step up our public education and publicity. The FHD has beefed up its publicity among food and catering businesses, and pilot schemes have been launched in relation to putting food waste at rear lanes. We allow them to put food waste at the rear lanes, but provided that the rubbish bins are well covered. And then we try to educate people when they are at a young age. So the FHD has published the Healthy Living Handbook, setting out healthy living habits, and these are distributed to primary school students. And the EDB has chipped in to help. And there will be clean school cleaning events and competitions to be held in schools. So we try to improve students' awareness and habit of keeping our city clean. DCS. And what about the shopfront extension? You've asked them to remove the extension. How come that they have been abiding by the law in the past few months? What have you done? Another member also told me the same, and she or he could understand that if you have people there around patrolling the place, and people will be law-abiding. But how come that you are not deploying anyone there, but yet people are still law-abiding? I'm happy to see. Well, I hope that the newspaper reports have not misreported it. The chairman of the Joint Association of Shops in Hong Kong said, Mr. Chen said, that it is important that the shop owners abide by the law, and this is welcomed by people of Hong Kong, and he's in favor of our amending the legislation. So we try to change the culture. I hope that past offenders have come to be aware that they have to pay a price if we have to build a clean city in Hong Kong. Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you, Chair. I see that the government has done something good and is willing to do the work, and that is worthy of our compliment. But how can we make sure that this is lasting? We know that CCTV cameras will be installed. I would like to understand that after CCTVs have been installed, would you be able to sparing some manpower? And saving manpower? And would you consider extending the program to cover locations which are not covered in the current program? There are locations where pigeons gather and the environment is quite poor. Wild pigeons are an issue of controversy, and you are dealing with the problem through the fixed penalty system now. And in recent past, we have seen the first case of the H5N1. Can you extend the program to cover that aspect as well? Going forward, you said that you would try to beautify certain locations, and there will be enhancement of landscape architecture. My personal view is that you should enhance your existing work first before you embark on something new. You have done very well to improve the current situation. The crux lies in how you can make sure that you have lasting effect on the work. Will there be a relapse? People are very concerned. So would you consider first working further on the existing locations before you go the next step? I have worked in the district for many years, and the future works or projects that you've mentioned should be the routine work of some government departments. Now, DCS. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Stanley for your comment about enhancing our existing efforts before we work on the beautification works, because you are worried that the manpower may be spread thin if we take on future work. When the task force was first appointed, the CE didn't say what is the tenure of the task force. If you ask me, I hope that the task force can work for at least 5 years, and I hope that within 2 to 3 years, our results can also be consolidated. We don't want to see people slackening in their efforts, and this is not something that we want to see. Now, as to whether we should strengthen or consolidate our achievement first before we embark on beautification works, but these are two areas of work. Cleansing work is being done by FHD, Housing Department, and Buildings Department. As for beautification projects, these are mainly done by the Highways Department, LCSD, or the Drainage Services Department. These are the main departments responsible. So these two areas of work can go in tandem. So that's why the task force would like to set priorities for our work. So that's hence the cleansing work in the first phase, and then the beautification work in the second phase. We have started our discussions on the beautification projects. We will be beautifying the street name plates. So we would work on these areas on a large scale, and we will expect to see some good results. Now, as for CCTV, can I defer to the director? As for the installation of CCTVs, that will help us in the planning for our enforcement actions. In the Tackling Hygiene Black Spots program, we have increased manpower substantially. In the current financial year, we have 38 more cleansing teams to work on the black spots and cleaning the streets. We have also increased the number of teams working on nighttime cleansing, and the refuse collection points have been extended in their hours of operation. And then there are also an increased number of cleansing teams. And we have a mobile team across the 18 districts in controlling rodent and in wet markets and bazaars and so on. We have enhanced our efforts in controlling rodents and cleansing work. So all these entail increased manpower. We would deploy our manpower resources flexibly, and we would try to deploy our resources appropriately to tackle hygiene black spots. Next one, Mr. Bill Tang. I'm an elected member from Kowloon East. I'm a DC member. And in the past few years, in the past few months, I've seen great work done by the government departments, and that's worthy of our compliment. The government departments have been working on the hygiene black spots, using a lot of their energy and at high costs, and we hope to change people's behavior. We hope that the shop owners can display different behavior, and I hope that the complaints can be dealt with expeditiously. Now, previously, the complainants always received reply that they don't. That the government doesn't know which department should be responsible, and that the government departments will continue to study which department will deal with it. But we are seeing a new way of tackling things of the current term government, and the members of the public said that ultimately they are seeing the real lane being cleansed after all these years. So this is the joint efforts of government departments and also the effort on the part of the DCS. You set priorities. We should deal with the hygiene black spots first, and I think mosquito and rodent have been a problem plaguing us. I know that the government will devote more resources in controlling rodents. Will you be adopting innovative methods? In past papers, you said that you would engage teams from the universities like the CUHK to try out new methods. Do you have any breakthroughs in that? And then mosquito has been a big problem because every year in April, a lot of parents have been complaining about mosquito problem in the playground, children's playground. So do you have new measures on that? And then also district participation, community participation. Now the district councils are not working these days. In the past, when there was good interaction among members of the district councils, we have been able to achieve some good results. So, DCS, can you share your views on engaging the community in your efforts? Now, I will be deferring to the secretary to talk about mosquito control because the secretary can provide you with good information. Now, as for community participation, we attach importance to that. We have to consolidate our achievements. We need the surveillance and monitoring by the community. But community participation, of course, is not just confined to that area. For the 18 district teams to be set up, we should be leveraging on these teams to help, particularly 3 new buildings, to keep their buildings clean. Like I said, if you work or live in a certain district, you can give us feedback on the black spots listed on our website. You can give us the evaluation on the existing black spots, and you have new black spots to complain or report, then you can easily make a complaint on the website. And I think community participation is crucial. I'll see if Ms. Zheng, Director of Home Affairs, anything to add.
係啦。
For mosquitoes, again, I would like to defer to the SEE because he can tell you a lot of new ideas. Secretary, thank you. DCS. Well, a few points to make. I did spend time on delving into the case. We can't just rely on the FDHD to deal with mosquito control. So the priority is that we need to coordinate with departments and bureaus so that we can also tackle the question of rodent control. We will work at the public housing estates, parks, markets. We will also get property management companies as well as the catering industry so that we can also include the private buildings as well as the sort of restaurants. Towards the end of this month, we are going to promulgate the program as to whether we can make use of innovative technologies. We did study the possibilities. As you have said, the other day we tried the new device called alcohol rodent killers. We have also used the T-shaped rodent traps. And the other day we tried the rodent baits, and it was good, but then they were not absolutely effective. So we have to try different ways. First of all, we have come up with the idea of nighttime rodent control teams. In the day, we may deploy the devices, but then rodents might only come out at night. So we need to cover the nighttime as well, and that will make our work more effective. Second, for rodent black spots, we need to be even more effective in our control methods. Say, for example, if you use the rodent adhesives, for very serious black spots, we will deploy that. Of course, I'm aware of the concern that it will be too cruel. We'll try to step up our monitoring. As soon as rodents are caught, they can be dealt with quickly so that we can reduce unnecessary pain. So we'll try to balance. And when compared with the previous methods, new methods have resulted in the number of rodents caught a number of times higher than before. So we can see a notable improvement. Home Affairs, can you give a brief reply? Thank you, Madam Chair. In relation to district participation, well, I'm sure district participation is important and is possible throughout. When it comes to the identification of black spots and potential black spots, other than the departments looking at the complaints, I'm sure district people can also let us know about the conditions on the ground. It is important. And then for the HAD, we have been tying in with the efforts of the law enforcement departments. And usually we have got publicity campaigns prior to the operations, and district participation has always been a feature. The DCS also talked about the community care teams. Yesterday, we had a briefing on the composition of the community care teams. Well, it's also a matter of district participation. District people will form a team and apply for the funding from us. So again, it is a matter of district participation. Well, they may visit the buildings and then they may come across concerns about cleanliness. So again, the HAD can be made aware of the problems and we can liaise with other relevant departments. Mr. Yang, I need to commend the DCS as well as the FHD. We used to be troubled by many environmental hygiene black spots. We have seen results. As stated in the paper, we got a number of black spots in Kowloon City, like the rear lane at Mekong Street, as well as the unauthorized building works in Shatong Street. So we've seen results. You have to be commended. There are still some other unauthorized building works that you need to eradicate. But still, there are problems that we need to address, like the scavengers. In Kowloon City, they will try to gather together the cardboard paper and they will leave it at certain spots on the thoroughfare. We used to be tolerant. Yes, we need to be so, but does it mean that we can't resolve the problem? Can we not set aside certain space so that they can have a place to store their cardboard paper? If you don't give them a spot, then they will either leave it in the rear lane or they will keep it somewhere near to a public market. And then for bagged rubbish left by the FDH, yes, they do have a need to deal with the rubbish over the weekend. It is understandable. But at the same time, can we not find a solution? Can we not find a place somewhere so that they won't affect our residents? And then for the logistics industry, near to Meiwa House, we have problems with rubbish because of the logistics operation. And then near to Chikong Street, we have logistics operators and they have been blocking a few streets in relation to the pavements. And the operations make the place dirty and blocked. So please also look at them as well. And then the question of CCTV cameras. Kowloon City is included in the pilot scheme. I do welcome it. But then just for the Kowloon City district, there are more than 10 black spots that warrant the installation of cameras. So please enlarge the scale of the CCTV cameras. You can't just install the CCTV cameras and go. You need to watch the footage and take law enforcement action against the offenders. My experience is that you seldom took action against the offenders. In other words, for the shop front extensions, the problem is still with us because there isn't any deterrent effect at all. And then the SEE talked about taking territory-wide efforts to deal with rodents. I agree with you, but the question is how. You talked about alcohol, rodent killers. We talked about the T-shaped rodent traps. We tried in Kowloon City, and I'm grateful to you, and we're grateful to your acceptance of our proposals. But it shows that the conventional methods are not working. If you still use the blue rodent baits, if you still use sweet potatoes as a bait, it won't work. It didn't work in the past, it won't work in the future. So SEG, I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of expectations of you. So please change the methods. Otherwise, I won't be hopeful about any improvements at all. DCS for Shatong Street. Yes, we'll follow up on the small-scale unauthorized building works there. For the street sweepers, in the case of the scavengers, I don't think we can be tolerant all the time. We need to make a distinction here. The task force did visit this topic. We need to make a distinction between street sweepers and others. For street sweepers, I think in the past, departments were not sort of willing to sort of do much about that, because there was a court ruling saying that the government should not have removed the personal belongings of a street sleeper. The government failed in that case. But again, we need to adopt a common sense approach. We need to be reasonable. In the case of Toka 1, there was this sort of person who accumulated 5.5 tons of junk and litter. You can't call it your personal belongings. It's a different case. So for street sleepers, are you going to slap a $3,000 fixed penalty ticket on him? I think we need to help them. Perhaps we should get the SWD to intervene. In the past, we asked the SWD to intervene, and we can somehow help with the solutions. For Mr. Yang's idea to set aside a spot at the RCP to let them store the junk, I don't think this is going to help. For a normal person, I don't think you will be accumulate so much junk. Pardon me to say that it may be something approaching being pathetic. No matter how much space you set aside, it won't be adequate for them to accumulate the junk. Now, in the case of the foreign domestic helpers, you talked about setting aside a place. I think what they need is a place for them to spend the weekend. I mean, they have to pack their articles for sending articles home. Last month in Lodak Circuit, I think they blocked a very busy corner. They tried to carry out the operation there because they thought that it was convenient for the logistics operation. But I don't think we should be that accommodating. We'll talk to the highways department to see whether we can set aside a place over the weekends, like providing space in a school campus, even if it is not that sort of convenient in terms of accessibility. It may be sort of a accommodating sort of arrangement. And then for the logistics operators, it is said that they have caused environmental nuisance. Mr. Yang, thank you for pointing out to us that we have to deal with the case in Zhejiang Street. Yes, we will look into that. As to the question of rodents, I'm afraid I have to defer to the SEE again. Secretary, please be concise. We will consider and adopt effective and innovative technologies. Indeed, you are brief. Mr. Tony Chair, thank you, Chair. The government has stepped up the efforts to keep the city clean. I'm sure you have my support because it did improve the environmental hygiene. The DCS said that it has been sustained. It appears that we are able to keep up the good habits, and it is important. The DCS mentioned this point about the enhancement of our cityscape. So we have to move beyond keeping the place clean. We need to keep our cityscape beautiful as well. So I'm grateful to the departments for your efforts as well as the work that you have planned for the future. Chair, if I may clarify one point and ask two other questions. First of all, many people have mentioned the problems of rodents. The SEE told us that different methods would be resorted to, which is good. I think there was a rumor saying that for government employees, they would only set up the traps for rodents during the week, but not go to pick up the rodent corpses over the weekend. Is this true? Please clarify. And then for the 3 new buildings, there used to be problems with the disposal of the municipal solid waste. What are you going to do to help them to resolve the problem? And then on page 6 in the Chinese version of the paper, mention is made about the work of the Drainage Services Department. This page 7 in the English version. Broken drains and sewers, as well as blockades of drains and sewers, have also affected the cleanliness of our place.
How effective has the work been? Because the blockage may be caused by many factors. So have you been able to resolve the problem? You talk about 256 underground sewers and drains and so on. I believe that the number should be more. So I'd like to know the effectiveness of your efforts. DCS, let me take the last question first. To my understanding, the work has been effective, quite effective. I visited with members a location in Zingai. The situation was quite appalling. There was blockage and there was an odor problem. The DSD worked on it, and recently I talked to the relevant member, and the work has proved to be effective. So the DSD has been playing a significant role within the task force. Rubbish may not look good, but then blockage of drain causes a serious problem. So Mr. Chair can rest assured that we will strengthen our work on the drains. For 3 new buildings, to my understanding, the FEHD's policy is this. Well, we don't encourage waste to be collected on the street. 3 new buildings, after all, are 3 new buildings, and municipal waste is generated every day. Well, FEHD will not be so naive as to suggest that they should dump their waste several streets away. They would rather put a 660-liter rubbish bin downstairs for them to deposit their waste. For rodent, the SEE has mentioned about this, and then the FHD will clarify whether rodent corpses are not collected on the weekends. Yes, I have answered all the questions. Can you talk about the effectiveness of your work on 3 new buildings? Do the 660-liter rubbish bins work? I visited some 3 new buildings myself, and I've talked to the NGOs myself. I think we have been effective to a certain extent. The JD has been helping 3,003 new buildings to handle the cleanliness situation in public places. The 3 new buildings tenants have to play their own part in dealing with the municipal waste. I think overall the situation has been satisfactory. But if you identify a location where litter bins are not available, please provide the information to us. Thank you for your question. FHD will collect live rodents 365 days a year and around the clock. And people can call 28680000 to request for our service. Now, last weekend there was a report saying that FHD did not deal with live rodents. That's not the case. That's not true. I have made inquiries with my colleagues. Our district staff had not received any calls for assistance in that regard. Maybe there was some miscommunication. In any case, I've mentioned our prevailing arrangement. That has all along been the practice. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question about rodent problem. Recently, there have been cases like this. So we are clear about what to do if rodent problem happens in a public place. But for some old-style buildings, the owners, corporations have to agree to certain things proposed to be done. The FHD has issued guidelines saying that you should install some meshes and so on. These are good tactics. But then if the owners, corporations, or the management office refuse to take action, then the residents are helpless. To our understanding, the residents can be in a passive position. Going forward, does the administration have any ways to deal with that kind of situation? Now, as in particular for old standalone buildings, the owners, corporations, or the property management companies do not want to do anything because of cost consideration. So do you have any plans to tackle that? Second, in the Tuen Mun new market, well, I have advocated for the confiscation of articles to deal with the problem, and I'd like to thank the FHD and the police for mounting a lot of joint operations in confiscating the goods, and that has proved effective. In the Sunhui market in Tuen Mun, the problem has been tackled at source. So I'm grateful for the FHD and police for their work. So my question is on the rodent problem. DCS, can I ask the department to take that question? Director. Property management company or owners corporation in the building are responsible for maintaining the cleanliness of their properties, and there should not be any hygiene nuisance caused. Recently, we have also issued a checklist on rodent for reference by the property management companies. We've been continuously doing publicity and public education, and we've been collaborating with the property management companies to raise people's awareness on rodent prevention. I understand that you are working on that, but sometimes some management offices and owners corporations just refuse to do anything. And I believe that they have in their mind some cost considerations as well. Apart from your traditional way of doing things, would you be embarking on new initiatives? Can the government interfere to a certain extent to help? Or else the residents will feel very helpless. This is not just an isolated case that I'm referring to. And I think a lot of people are bothered by the problem. So they have the liability, legal responsibility to work on things, but they refuse to do so. What is the legal consequence? Mr. Gordon Chow. Well, we have heard Mr. Chow's views. Well, this is another kind of a long-standing, big and difficult problem. Maybe we can take this up at the District Matters Coordination Task Force. Anything to add? Yes, under existing legislation, when the parties do not heed our views and a hygiene problem is caused, under the law, we can actually enforce the law against these parties. Now, no more member would like to ask a second question. Ask the question. Let's move on to the next item. Thank you, DCS. So let's invite the administration team in for the second agenda item. Secretary, you can stay here. Next item is proposal to raise the level of fixed penalty for littering, shopfront extension is disposal of waste, etc. under the fixed penalty, public cleanliness and obstruction ordinance, Cap 570. Let me say this to members. I welcome your expression of views, but we don't have to put this to the vote or make a decision because the government is going to conduct public consultation. For now, 3 members have pressed the request to speak button. First, Secretary, can you brief us on the paper first? Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the fixed penalty public cleanliness and obstruction ordinance, there are 9 scheduled offences, and the level of fixed penalty has remained at a level of $1,500,000 without any adjustments since June 2023. To increase increase the cleanliness of environmental hygiene in the long run, we think it's necessary to raise the penalties. So we propose 2 penalty level. One is $3,000, the other $6,000. For scheduled offences involving individuals' behavior, for example, littering, spitting, and depositing of waste, we suggest that the penalty be fixed at $3,000, which is double the existing amount. And for offences relating to shopfront extension, disposal of large amount of construction or other waste, they have greater impact on people of Hong Kong, and we know that some shop operators and construction contractors see that the penalty as part of their operating costs. So the problem has not been tackled effectively. So we suggest that the fixed penalty for these 2 offences be increased to $6,000. Now, on street shopfront extension, apart from increasing the penalty level, we would also be enforcing the law in a new way, and the enforcement officers will seize and remove the items illegally placed on the streets, and will also issue multiple fixed penalty tickets to repeat offenders within a short period of time. And with the new enforcement strategy, we consider it will significantly raise the cost of breaching the law. So we hope to change the behavior in the long run. So we think that this will be a good deterrent. And because of this, 5 scheduled offences, we have to make corresponding changes in these other 5 ordinances. So we're dealing with this all at one go. Madam Chair, I would like to stress that this is a preliminary proposal that we are putting forth, and we understand that the society has different views on the increase in the penalty level, and there cannot be actually objective standards to ascertain the appropriate level of the penalty level. We will conduct public consultation for 1 month to listen to the community's views before finalizing the proposal. We plan to introduce the amendment bill into the LegCo in the 2nd quarter of 2023 at the soonest. And then as the next stage, we would also be reviewing all the different levels of fixed penalty of different offences to enhance deterrent effect. This is the first step that we're taking, and half a year later, we will be giving you details of the next phase of our work. We are happy to answer members' questions. The first one, Mr. Kisan Yang. In the interest of time, 4 minutes for each member, including questions and answers. Increasing the fine from $1,000 to $3,000 for littering and increasing the penalty for shopfront extension to $6,000, I'm in support. I think we should introduce progressive fixed penalty before we see a deterring effect. We should actually implement a point deduction system or suspend that business even. For those repeated offenders, what they are most worried is that their business will be suspended. So if there is a mechanism to deter them, and in which their business license will be suspended after many times of breaches, then that would be deterrent enough. That would be able to deter the repeat offenders. In the last agenda item, the DCS said that the FEHD workers will be authorized to deal with articles illegally placed on the street. That power previously rested with the police only, so I am in support of that kind of proposal. Second, on increasing the penalty level for littering to $3,000, I'm in support. But I think we should come up with a clear definition of littering.
Residents have been telling me that they will be booked for littering if the litter bin is full and they have nowhere to deposit the litter. And then for the ashes from burnt cigarettes, when the wind blows away the ashes, the smoker will be booked. And then there are also visitors to public markets who have been booked or given a fine for sort of dropping a piece of tissue. And then what about other environmental problems? It seems that even if you increase the penalty levels, you're not going to address some other problems. So for littering, I'm afraid you have been going after the young, the old, and the vulnerable. Seldom have you taken action against the young and the strong or healthy persons. So please address the problem, because residents have the impression that they're being bullied, they're being picked for prosecution. I hope this won't happen again. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Yang. I would defer to the director in relation to the details concerning law enforcement. For obstruction, yes, I agree with your concern. Raising the penalty level is but the first step. We are going to review the other powers under the legislation. We'll try to see if we can amend other pieces of legislation so as to make sure that will be even more effective. Say, for example, as the DCS has said, for shopfront extension and thus obstruction of public places, we'll try to confiscate the goods, and we will also slap a fine of $6,000 on them. And we hope that the FEHD staff members will be empowered to seize and confiscate the goods without the intervention of the police. As to the idea of having a progressive fixed penalty mechanism, it is rather complicated. It takes time to see if we can overcome the technical difficulties. In the second round of our work, we'll try to share with you our findings. Director, please be brief. Thank you. When it comes to law enforcement, we will make a judgment concerning the actual circumstances. Statistics shows that when we issue the fixed penalty tickets against littering, most of the time we're dealing with cigarette butts that have been dropped onto the ground. As to how we can make sure that shop owners will be deterred from shopfront extension and thus obstruction of public places? Well, for fresh provision shops, they have to be licensed by the FEHD in relation to their business operation. And we do have a demerit system. If sufficient demerit points have been recorded, their license will be suspended, and it has worked. Mr. Peter Shield, thank you, Chair. I commended the department while the DCS was present for the last agenda item. For the past 1 month, we have seen a very significant improvement in relation to the rear lanes, etc. I asked the DCS as to the ways adopted to achieve the results. I know that you haven't had any increases of the penalty levels. It was still $1,500, but then there was a facelift in relation to the cityscape. So I think it's not just a matter of penalty levels, it's a matter of enforcing the law. I'm not saying that you were not hardworking enough. It was difficult because you will be threatened. People might even hit you. So without the police help, it would be difficult for you. Now that the government is resolved to do it, so if you sustain your law enforcement efforts, not to mention $1,500, even if you keep it at $1,000, people would not be encouraged to break the law, even if it is $1,000 fines only. And of course, I know there is the question of inflation. We haven't had any increases since year 2003. What about the composite inflation rate? At that time, it was 65.9%. Today, it is 103.5%. In the month October 2022. In the year 2023, you gained $10,000 a month. Nowadays, this is more or less the same amount. Now you're going to increase it from $15,000 to $3,000. Not that I'm not in favor of any increases, but not that much, please. Say, for example, Mr. Yang told us that old ladies were fined for dropping a piece of tissue, a man was fined for dropping a cigarette butt, etc. If you break the law, you have to pay for it. But then there are people who are just being careless and they are caught inadvertently. Just like in the case of motorists, they don't want to be given a fixed penalty ticket. Sometimes when you move from the 70 km per hour zone to a 50 km per hour zone, you may not be able to adjust in time, and then you may still be caught by the fixed penalty ticket for speeding. So in relation to this case, please consider the affordability. For shops, instead of $1,500, it will be $1,600, so 3 times more than before. Yes, I do agree that you need to increase the penalty levels in the interest of catching up with inflation. But to what extent? For shops, they need to have goods delivered to them. Sometimes they are not able to take it in immediately. Sometimes they have to leave it on the pavement temporarily. Now, shop owners are worried that they may be caught and fined before they had time to remove the goods delivered. Do you allow them to leave the goods there for 4 hours, 8 hours, the whole day? Of course not. There's a clear case of obstruction. But if you do allow them a brief period of time, a buffer, then it will be better. Say, for example, half an hour's time. Please watch the time limit. So please bear in mind the affordability. Just 2 points. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Secretary, I'd like to thank the member for his question. We are fully aware of the needs of the shop owners. If it is a genuine case of offloading and offloading goods and taking delivery, we will be understanding. Well, as to your concern, that is whether the increase is too drastic and is creating too much a burden on them. Well, there's a basket of factors. We do need to increase the penalty levels to keep up the deterrent effects. You can't just count on us increasing the manpower to deal with the problem. It's better to work on both fronts. And in this way, we don't need to put in so much manpower while keeping the place clean. So this is our proposal for the time being. We are still in the consultation period. We will make a final decision in the light of the public response. Noted, but for the small shop owners, they may only get a few $1,000s. If you slap a $6,000 fine on them, it is difficult for them. So please be careful about the specific amount of money to be fined. I think that's a loud and clear message. Tony Chair, for the increase in the penalties, you do have my support. For a period of time, we just try to hope that people won't break the law. We are concerned about the law enforcement as well as other support measures. If it is well coordinated, it will be even more effective. And I don't think it is a matter of abusing the fixed penalty takers. I think the objective is to hope that everybody will be law-abiding. If you're law-abiding, you won't be affected by the increase in the level of penalties. SEE for shops. As a result of your joint efforts, I can see for myself that people have been less blatant in terms of shop front extension. They are more aware of the problem, and they have removed their goods and do not leave them on the pavement. I think it's a matter of keeping up with the good work, and we have to make sure that the fines are deterrent enough. So you have my support. Now, concerning construction waste, the government has done a lot of work, like construction waste levy and construction waste collection pilot scheme. You can make a booking in advance. It is a smart arrangement, and then you get a discount for the construction waste levy. But then I'm not too sure about the effectiveness. I can still see a lot of construction waste being abandoned here and there. Now, even if you increase it to $6,000, it may not have a strong deterrent effect when you compare with the costs involved in sending the waste to the landfill. It may still be cheaper. So I hope the Bureau and the departments can understand this point. For construction waste, when we are talking about a huge amount of it, then it is indeed still a bargain to pay the $6,000 fine, then deal with it properly. So what is your comment on my observation? Secretary, I'd like to thank the member for his concern about construction waste. For the government, we have adopted a multi-pronged approach so as to deal with construction waste. Well, around about 2 years ago, we started to install cameras at the black spots. In the light of the information gathered and the light of the complaints received, we set up a task force to tackle such a problem. Another point is that whenever construction waste is found on the road, we try to expedite the clearance of such. In the past, we had to work through different departments before we could resolve the problem. It took 2 to 3 weeks' time. That's too long. And we have now made use of information technology, and then within a couple of days, we're able to clear them. And thirdly, if we just rely on law enforcement and penalizing them with a fine, it won't work. We have got a pilot scheme. In fact, the waste generator can call us and make a booking in advance to have the waste collected, and it is not expensive. We started out at Sam Shui Po. Whenever we saw the waste, we would collect them from the street. And in total, we saw a drop of 80%. And even for the territory as a whole, a cut of 70%. So we are seeing results. Generally speaking, we are talking about renovation, decoration of shops, homes, and buildings that have given rise to such construction waste. We try to talk to the construction industry to inform them of the existence of such an advanced booking scheme. So it is a matter of having the carrot and stick approach. So increasing the fine and telling them of the availability of the booking service. We hope it can work. Next, Holden Chow. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, 2 parts to my observation. First of all, increasing the penalty for obstruction by shops from $1,500 to $1,600. You have my support. Experience tells me that, say for example, for Sanhui Market in Tuen Mun, earlier on there used to be serious obstruction. At that time, pedestrians could not even walk through. thankful to the police as well as the other departments. They confiscated the goods and then it worked. It deterred the shop operators because in the past they used to factor that in as part of the business cost. They would just pay the fine as if it is part of the cost of business. So by confiscating the goods, that was one of the ways we suggested to have a stronger deterrent effect. Now, for the obstruction of public places, by increasing it from $1,500 to $6,000, it would further enhance the deterrent effect.
Second point about littering and the related penalty. An increase from $1,500 to $3,000 is proposed. We understand where the administration is coming from. You hope to have a stronger deterrent effect. But I'd like to remind the administration, when you enforce the law, you must focus on the serious cases. Say, for example, I've been mentioning this on various occasions to the Secretary. For example, feeding of wild pigeons. Now, because of constraints of the law, all you can do is to fine the person $1,500. But, well, these kind of behavior causes serious hygiene problems. So you should focus on tackling such breaches. You are proposing to increase the penalty for littering. I hope that in law enforcement, you should focus your efforts on the more serious offenses instead of minor offenses. Say, for example, an elderly person carelessly drops some litter on the street, and if you target them and enforce the law against them, then that's not good. Of course, I know that this is not good behavior, but if you focus your energy on such individuals, I'm afraid that you will give people the impression that you are misplacing your efforts on catching these elderly persons instead of feeding of wild pigeons. I think the letter warrants more of your attention. Please make sure that you have the right focus in your law enforcement work. Thank you. I totally agree. Can I defer to the director to talk about our practice? Now, after all, our manpower is limited, and we should focus our efforts on the rampant or serious cases. But I must say, if you break the law, you will still be vulnerable to be fined. So can I defer to the Secretary to talk about our real practices? I understand that people are very concerned about littering or disposal of large amount of waste on the street. So we adopt a multi-pronged approach to crack down on such offenses. We have set up dedicated law enforcement teams which are stationed in different places. A senior superintendent is in charge of the team. At black spots, they will step up their enforcement actions against the offenders. We would also carry out policy and public education work, and at the same time, we would step up our law enforcement action. The next one is myself, Ms. Judy Chan. Well, a simple one from me. In principle, I am in support of the proposal because for a number of years, the penalty level has not been increased. And I can feel more for myself that the street environment has indeed been improved. But I'm still worried that the economy is not that good right now. So in terms of timetable, would you be bearing in mind the recovery of the economy before you drop your timetable for implementing the proposals? Second, I also agree with the several members' suggestion about putting in place a progressive fixed penalty mechanism. I learned from the document that there might be technical difficulties, but I think these are really technical difficulties only. If we can overcome the technical difficulties, I hope that the Secretary will not rule out that possibility. Keep the idea in mind. In future, you can study whether this can be implemented. Thank you. First, we would introduce the amendment bill early next year if everything goes smoothly. We would be the bill will take effect only at the second or third quarter of next year. The electrical still has to scrutinize the bill and the proposal, and if you think that the economy is still not that good, then we can still look at the deferring the time to introduce or implement the proposal. Now, as for progressive fixed penalty mechanism, this involves complicated issues. Maybe there might be more conflicts caused. And then there will be a lot of arguments on site at the time of the enforcement. So that would undermine the efficiency of law enforcement, and more conflicts might be created. Our ultimate aim is to have a stronger deterrent effect. So would we be issuing more fixed penalty tickets in a short period of time work? So anyway, we would consider your suggestion. I think we are finished with the first round. We have still 8 minutes left. For the second round, we have Mr. Peter Shou who would like to speak. 3 minutes, including questions and answers. Thank you, Chair. The administration said that we should increase the penalty level based on the inflation rate. I agree to that. And in Mongkok, there is the flower market. If you've been there, you know that a lot of flower shops are operating there. So would you be dealing with that kind of location in a special way? The DCS said that if, for some food establishments, they have been dealing with the food waste very well at the railings, and they are putting the food waste into covered rubbish bins. That's good. Now, would you be doing the same with flower markets? At the Victoria Park, we have the Hong Kong Goods Fair held annually, and all the soccer pitches have been used for holding the fair. This is a temporary market, and during festivities, there might be hawkers who are operating on the streets, and there might be shopfront extension. So during the festival times, will the government be dealing with things in a special way, or you just be using across-the-board approach and dealing with things in a rigid way? In the last discussion item, some members said that we should still to enforce the law during the festivities. The society has high expectations on our environmental hygiene, like what the DCS. I think this is a good high time for us to enhance our cityscape and environmental hygiene. So we would enforce the law as much as possible. In enforcing the law, we would also be setting priorities. But in simple terms, we would adopt a progressive approach. We'll try to improve things step by step. You mentioned about the flower market. At appropriate time, we would also enforce the law and try to make improvements. So we hope that the shop operators can tidy their things. Mr. Peter Shiu, third round, 1 minute. The meeting should last till 4:30. So I can continue, right? If no other member would like to speak. We still have 6 minutes left. Secretary, I'd like to say something about the penalty level. I just quoted an example. In the past couple of months, even without an increase in the penalty level, the situation has improved a lot. I think it has to do with whether you enforce the law or not. Now, for illegal parking, Hong Kong people know that the penalty ticket is $450. This seems to be a small amount. But then if the police enforce law frequently during a certain period, the situation would improve substantially. During the epidemic, we see a lot of people parking illegally everywhere. It has nothing to do with the penalty level. It's probably because the police have been kept busy dealing with the violent incidents and have no manpower to deal with illegal parking. So it all boils down to how frequently you enforce a law and how law-abiding people are. Now, on YouTube, you see that people who are driving a Benz will have great arguments with the police over this $450 penalty ticket. The fine or the penalty will be increased to $3,000, and people, I believe that people will get worried. I think it's useful to increase the penalty level, but don't try to enforce the law excessively. The same goes for shops. Some shops are really outrageous. I would condemn such shops. But then for a lot of shop operators are law-abiding, and sometimes they carelessly place things outside the shop, and we're moving the goods inside the shop. The goods will be left on the street and so on. So please make a brief response, Secretary. We've heard Mr. Shiu's views. There will be a 1-month consultation. We will carefully consider all the views collected. Let's move on to the next item. AOB, Mr. Stephen Ho, on the 7th of December, has submitted a report to the LegCo to report on the work of this panel in 2022. This is the last regular meeting in this current session. I, together with Mr. Stephen Ho, the chairman, would like to express our gratitude to the members for your support and participation in the panel. Meeting adjourned.